So here, if you take the phloem, this is also a complex permanent tissue like the xylem. But the function of phloem differs from xylem in translocation. Translocation of water, translocation of food. So this is the vascular tissue which translocates food in plant. When you take phloem, we are saying it as complex, so we'll have different cells in phloem tissue. Sieve elements, companion cells, phloem fibers, phloem parenchyma. We'll just add phloem to fibers and parenchyma in order to differentiate them from xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. Both these cells are present both in xylem and phloem. Okay. So here if you take the sieve elements, so in the other class we discussed what is meant by sieve, what it will do. It will have small pores for translocation of food. Okay. When you take sieve elements, there are two types of sieve elements. If you see, the sieve elements are made up of generally sieve tubes and sieve cells. So why there are tubes and cells? If you take, the tubes are the advanced phloem tissue and the cells are the primitive phloem tissue. That's what I just said, primitive and advanced. We find the sieve cells in primitive plants. For example, let me introduce some names. I think you are not familiar with these names. Let me introduce terms called gymnosperms. Have you heard this word, students?
No, ma'am.
No? Then pteridophytes. Angiosperms.
Yes, ma'am.
No, don't get worried about the terminology. I'll give an introduction to this terminology because in later classes you will get more information about this terminology. This is nothing but classification of plants. So you will be having various types of plants. So based on some characters, they will be grouped. That is called classification. Some plants based on reproduction process are grouped into gymnosperms, angiosperms, pteridophytes. Okay, based on the process of reproduction. If you take the gymnosperms, you will have the asexual and sexual reproduction in plant by various means. When you take angiosperms, you will have sexual reproduction of only one kind of plants. And when you take pteridophytes, these are primitive two gymnosperms. So here the concept is plants are grouped into various types. And those groups were named like this. Okay. So basically we call it as plant classification. Classification means what? Just grouping. Grouping the candidates having similar features. So here when you take the gymnosperms and pteridophytes, both these are, the gymnosperms and the pteridophytes, both are primitive in nature. So they'll possess only sieve cells. And in xylem also, they'll possess only tracheids. In other words, we can say tracheids in xylem tissue, I said, are primitive tissue, primitive cells. So we'll find primitive cells or primitive tissues in gymnosperms and pteridophytes. Okay, these groups of plants we call as primitive type of plants. When you take angiosperms, those are the most advanced plant group. So when we are saying it's the most advanced plant group, we can conclude that angiosperms possess sieve tubes. a phloem. And even in xylem, they may possess vessels. That's the difference I told. Tracheids and vessels difference. Primitive, advanced cells. Same way, sieve tubes and sieve cells. Sieve tubes are advanced cells. Sieve cells are the primitive cells.